Welcome back to Worlds 2018 for our second quarterfinal of the day. Royal Never Give Up versus G2 Esports. You gotta look
Giant Panda.
Giant Panda. Apparently that's a member of the RNG fan club.
I'm just like, can this get stranger?
Is,
Like IG
what I've
upsetting
been
KT,
told.
Giant Panda on screen.
Right? In case you haven't had enough League of Legends yet with that first best of 5 going the distance, we've got one more for you. G2 versus RNG. RNG here, MSI champions. Let's not forget, as we just watched one tournament favorite go down, that the next one is playing in this best of 5. And they're looking now to meet their LPL brethren, IG, in the semifinals.
But I have this weird feeling now because coming into the tournament, I said to myself, Gen G will get out of their group, and the only team that will beat KT in the best of 5 is gonna be RNG. Wrong, 1 and 5, wrong, quarterfinal, and now everything in my brain is screaming, RNG heavy favorites against G2.
Throw it all out.
But there's this thing with this tournament now and this meta and these different play styles where anything can happen.
Yeah, and they're still heavy favorites,
Right.
But as you mentioned, you gotta watch, you gotta play the games.
It's the but. It's the but that keeps popping into your head, right? Any statement we now make is essentially able to be couched with a but on the end of it. Let's talk about this matchup, though, and let's talk about these play styles of these different teams that we have seen on display throughout the tournament. For RNG, hyper carry, hyper carry, hyper carry. It's how they won MSI, putting all of the eggs in the Uzi basket.
Yeah, and it's just, again, it's the flying V, and Uzi is the puck. You have all of these big, heavy meatballs in front of him. That said, Uzi has been changing it up through the group stage. He decided to throw away the Karsa pick, didn't want to go for the late game, and went for more the lane phase, pulling out the Lucian, pulling out the Kalista that Deficio likes so much.
Exactly, and what they will end up doing in the game is obviously not just sit back and just wait for Uzi. No, they will still try, fan out on the entire map, try and buy more time for Uzi to farm in the mid lane, and then eventually get to big late game team fights.
I want to talk about what, if anything, was exposed around RNG, though, in the group stages. Because as we mentioned, they dropped a couple games, and it took midday adaptation for them to put a couple wins back together in order to make it to the knockout stage.
Yeah, C9 and Vitality both beat them with pretty strong laning and early game compositions. They ran over, they got early gold leads, and most importantly, they had a lot of initiation to force fights with those advantages.
Exactly, and also I think the solo laners got exposed a little bit during those games. Xiaohu didn't really show up, Letme died early on in a lot of the games, and that's where G2's playstyle can go in and be very, very impactful because they play around Wunder and Perkz so much. Can these guys win early laning phase together with Jankos? G2 can start snowballing.
And frankly, it just used to feel that when you watched, you know, the LCK, the LPL versus NA or E or however you want to break down those regional matchups, that simply the Western teams didn't have the individual talent to compete, and that's completely untrue now. Now you have Wunder, you know, popping off, taking names off of LCK, LPL top laners, Perkz and Caps rising up, Sneaky redeeming himself in lane, Licorice making a huge case for himself. So I think that's a huge factor here where individual performers like Letme on RNG really fell down to the Western counterparts.
Yeah, and I really want to see Perkz versus Xiaohu. I mean, we've seen Perkz upset an LPL team in a best of 5 before. It happened to MSI a little while ago, and he's had a decent tournament so far. He hasn't been the main contributor, but if Perkz could find a way to get back to some of the performances we've seen in the past, then you're thinking maybe 2 solo lanes are in the side of G2, and that would be how they actually win.
Yeah, especially when you win mid lane against RNG, you can use that to go bot lane and stop Uzi from farming. You can suddenly set up tower dives down there. And that's important because we know the G2 bot lane are not going to be playing for kills on their own. They will sit back and play a bit more safe. So once you get the early advantage in mid, that's when you start making the big plays.
That was a sweet CSD considering a lower jungle proximity for Perkz as compared to Xiaohu, just to put a little bit more context to the numbers in the mid lane. So definitely a matchup that we will spotlight and track throughout the series. But now it's time. You got to put your reputations on the line with the second prediction of the evening. Deficio, I know you said you had feelings and come to you second, but Frost, what are you thinking? Can G2 do it?
Does it even mean anything anymore after all the upsets?
I mean, I have a feeling all of our pick'ems are well dead at this point, so we're really not playing for anything at this point. It's just maybe a little pride.
The prediction was 3-1 to RNG. Naturally, I believe that RNG are the tournament favorites, that they would come in and win. I had them favored over KT. I don't know how I feel about it now, but I feel like I have to go back to it that in a best of 5, when it comes down to it, you play late game, and beating RNG and Uzi late game is almost impossible.
You feeling the upset?
I got the 3-1 RNG upset, you know. That's the big surprise today.
At this point, it would be an upset.
The Heimerdinger gets a game.
All right, what do you think of Jet?
It's been an inconsistent year, except for RNG winning every tournament they play, and I have to go with RNG.
It's fair, and it's hard to argue with that. G2 are looking to pull off a massive upset, and RNG are aiming to make history. So let's head over to Quickshot, Vidius, and Azael for game one.
Thank you very much, Dash, and thank you very much, Analyst Des, because whenever the favorites are favored, they falter. I'm Quickshot, he's Azael, that's Vidius, and we're going to see whether or not G2 can once again pull off an upset, but this is a little bit more challenging than what we just saw, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly want to say so, but I mean, had the tournament gone to expectation, okay, easy 6-0 for RNG in groups, you know, easy 6-0 for KT, no problems
don't even
there.
get out of the group on paper.
G's out of group, right? Like, there's so many things that haven't gone according to plan. Everything's out the window.
Well, let's see what these teams decide to do today. As, of course, it is the second best of 5 here in the quarterfinals. Karsa, Jhin, and the rest of the LCK broadcast team will be introducing the players from their booth. And it gives us a little bit of time to take a look at RNG, talk a little bit about expectations, because they are starting Karsa over MLXG, and I think that's probably the smart choice. MLXG a little bit more of the riskier jungler, but also Karsa is the calculated one that can shut down Jankos and G2.
Yes, I think that when you kind of compare the styles and you look back at the way in which RNG played during the group stages, when they had MLXG, they drafted lane-dominant champions, they looked for early game snowballs, and they relied on MLXG to be that proactive playmaker that would make stuff happen early. But Karsa, much more of the calculated guy, much more of the scaling compositions. They go more towards team fighting, and they rely on the precision from Karsa to set up those great fights later on into the game.
And we've kind of had this story talking about you have to take game off Karsa before you get to see MLXG.
Yeah.
You know, he is kind of waiting in the wings and obviously sitting with their coaches. In professional play, we have seen that having a jungle sub seems to be the most effective route, right? And this is a team with 2 fantastic junglers, 2 very different styles, and we'll see if they're going to be highlighted in this series.
Exactly the case. The jungler's on screen right now. Jankos will have to definitely win me over. I think Jankos has been a little bit more topsy-turvy than I would like to see. The man that was once heralded as the first Blood King, not having the greatest early game impact here at the World Championship. We saw Wunder a moment or 2 ago. He was definitely setting up the 1-3-1, playing the split push in the side lanes, but the man backing him up, Perkz, this is his team, this is his G2. The squad was rebuilt around him. Those are the 2 players where my eyes will be looking, Wunder and Perkz.
And I just feel like so far, if you just consider how the teams have played, Perkz should have the advantage over Xiaohu. Wunder should have the advantage over Letme when it comes to just straight up 1v1 in lane. But the teamwork, the coordination that you see from RNG, and when they have a big carry in the form of Uzi at the helm, you kind of look at these late games and you're like, if G2 don't find those lane advantages, will they really be able to hold a candle to this RNG?
And that's, I think, a really big deal because while you would look on paper so far, Perkz would have the lane advantage from this tournament, Xiaohu doesn't have to get a lane advantage, and he's been picking very heavily towards enabling the rest of his team, playing more of these supportive style picks, things that can enable his team, and in particular, Uzi, right? Whereas Perkz and Wunder, it feels like they must win lane, you must get to the side lane, and that is really kind of the path to victory that most people are painting for G2.
All right, well, we're going to find out exactly which path G2 decides to go, because the pressure's on them, right? It's up to G2 to prove that they can match better, outsmart, outplay RNG. We're about to get into picks and bans for game 1 in this best of 5 between Royal Never Give Up and G2 Esports. As soon as Karsa Jhin decides to let us get into picks and bans, obviously addressing the fans in Busan, and it's quite exciting to see Wadid in particular here, playing in front of his family for the first time. They actually live just down the road. And we're about to jump into our second quarterfinal here in the World Championships in 2018 live from Busan. Vedius, turn our attention to the draft. RNG, they had side selection as the highest seed. They elected blue side. So doesn't this help G2 out with some theoretical counter picks? Or what do you think the teams will do coming into game number 1?
Well, one of the things I've noticed about RNG is that they actually try to stay away from champions like the Aatrox, and they like to put Letme on an engaged, tanky-style top laner to kind of facilitate a lot of those fights. They also like to put heavy priority on getting their bot lane early on in the draft, and I feel like that we're either going to see early priority on things like the Sion or Urgot, along with something like the Rakan, or maybe even the Karsa for the side of RNG, so they can set up their strong sides of the map first.
I think also going blue side, we've seen how well Urgot has been doing into Aatrox in general throughout this tournament. So if you're worried about Wunder as a win condition and you don't want to ban out those carries, as we're seeing they're not in this first round, you can simply go for the first pick on the Urgot, try to make sure that Letme has a stable top lane.
And I'm looking at the bans right now. RNG have literally left everything open. I don't know if G2 want to give the Urgot away. They know it's going to get first pick by the side of RNG, but they are actually going to do it.
Could also be, you know, a potential flex pick that they're looking for if they want to go at the Aatrox, but I really am expecting the Urgot. I think it makes so much more sense given how much of a threat Wunder has been and how stable the Urgot pick has shown to be. It also does play much more like a tank than many of the other carries, and as you say, that does really kind of fit Letme's style, and this is a guy who's known as the best team fighting top laner in the LPL.
Yeah, he certainly is, and now that he is on this Urgot, he has a pretty big comfort pick. You can see that the early prioritization of the Taliyah also came through from RNG, something that Karsa has played a lot of, along with the Lucian and the Gragas. The Leona answer is there for the Rakan pickup from the side of G2, which has been a bit of a comfort pick for Wadid, but now you're kind of looking at this bot lane for G2. They could grab themselves a strong AD carry, they could grab the Jhin, but instead they're going to focus on Perkz. So priorities seem to be shifted around a lot so far in this first round.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I'm now looking at RNG to actually focus on some bans towards Hjarnan.
Yeah.
I do think that if you ban away things like the Jhin that have been very safe for him, you know, some of these more comfort safety style picks, and you put him in a brawling 2v2 down in the bot lane against Uzi on something that's more early game focused, against Ming on this Leona, that could be very tough for G2 because we've been looking for them to absorb pressure in the bot lane while their solo lanes get work done.
But I do quite like this Nocturne ban from RNG because if you look at how G2 have drafted, they've already got themselves the 1-3-1. The thing that got them through the group stages, the style that they have truly worked very well towards so far throughout Worlds. And by banning away the Nocturne, you kind of take Jankos off one of those side pick lane picks that really supports this style of play.
Well, the question is, what do they do with the bottom lane, and how do they survive Uzi and Ming? That's the question I have. The last ban for Royal Never Give Up will be the Jhin Zhao, so jungle focus once again, removing that from the pool, and G2 will have to answer now either their AD carry or their jungle pick.
It'll be interesting here because I feel like if you're saving your AD for last, they may be looking at one of the mages, something like a Brand even, you know, dependent upon what Uzi picks. You could show your jungler here, and I think that is what they're kind of considering. Otherwise, I do think you just kind of blind pick your AD here and allow your jungler to have counter pick at the end. That being said, it is going to be the Gragas Lucian for Uzi. So again, they are going towards that very aggressive 2v2. Lucian, Leona. They want to force G2 into a brawling bottom lane. And will G2 respond with a mage here?
I wonder if they just go for the Sivir instead. I feel like that with her spell shield, she can mitigate like the level 6 ulti from the Leona. And if they are playing this 1-3-1 style, you just kind of want wave clear in the mid lane too. So that's kind of where my head is going now. But as you said, a mage isn't completely out of the question. Jhin is the other favored pick for Hjarnan as well. And we know that it is a very comfortable champion for him.
Which do you prefer when you see the two compositions side by side? Picking a Jhin into Leona, Sion, Urgot. Low mobility, if anybody ever gets in range, he's going to get done.
I think I like the Jhin more for laning power, just because it offers a lot of wave clear. I think that when you think of the champions that Hjarnan's found a lot of success with, these mage-style champions, the fact that you can just spam those spells, push out the wave, and with your crits, you can actually trade pretty decently, I feel, against Lucian at early levels too. It's just that if you ever find yourself in a skirmish against that Lucian, you're very likely going to get out-traded.
You certainly are, but I do agree. I think it's a good pick. Also, simply when you're looking at the range of the champion, Sivir is such a short-range champion, and when you're looking at Taliyah, who can wall off behind you, the Sion potentially roaming down from mid lane, this is a composition where you could very likely have 4 bot or 5 bot from RNG very early, looking to punish this G2 lane.
4 or 5 players in the bot lane around Uzi?
It has been seen before.
Never, Azale, never. I would not expect that at all. But I do like the fact you touch on those solo laners. Urgot into Aatrox, Sion into Ryze. One of the things that we were talking about coming into this game was how the G2 solo lanes could, maybe might, be able to outperform RNG solo lanes, and the champions favor RNG a little bit to cover that up.
Right, yeah, it does feel like the RNG have drafted the way in which we expected when they run Karsa. Much more towards team fighting, Karsa being on a big damage dealer, gonna be one of the contributors and playmakers in these fights, while Xiaohu playing for the team. Letme on that tank. It feels like RNG is saying, you know what, G2, we don't think you're gonna get an early lead, we're gonna take you to team fights, and we're gonna crush you there.
Well, the pressure is on G2. Can they enable the 1-3-1 and repeat the victories that they've already shown here in the World Championship? We're kicking off the quarterfinal between tournament favorites Royal Never Give Up and G2 Esports. The first time ever that G2 Esports has qualified for the best of 5s and playoffs. And they're going up against one of the strongest teams to be here in the championships.
Now, we talked about how RNG have drafted more of this team fight style, but they do have lanes that they can play around, in particular, down towards the bot side of the map. You already talked about it, Azale, the fact that the Sion can use his ulti to roam down towards the bot side. They're running double teleport. You have the Taliyah ultimate as well, combined with the engage from the Leona. RNG have many options with regards to getting Uzi ahead during the laning phase.
And it's very telling that this is not a scaling marksman in the bottom lane. They don't want to just farm off this bottom lane, trade farm, and then try to force a team fight, because they know if you give G2 enough time, they can set up the 1-3-1, and that can become a very strong win condition for them. Having that Lucian with the Leona really says they want to force the issue early before those solo laners can get online.
And the thing for G2 is they have shown, especially against the FLICKR Freaks when they played them the second time round, that as long as they're pretty calm and calculated in how they play the early game, they're pretty confident in Perkz and Wunder's ability to generate their own leads. They don't need Jankos to make something happen in order to be strong. And when they actually set up for the 1-3-1, their ability to control vision, dictate where the enemy is moving around the map is actually very strong. So I feel like the responsibility falls on RNG to be the proactive team. Otherwise, Perkz and Wunder, I expect to be able to build their own leads.
Well, Karsa's already threatening a play. If Hjarnan and Wadid step forward, then Karsa may be able to jump in. He's going to go for the Scuttle Crab as well. And just a reminder that both of these teams, were involved in tiebreaker scenarios to qualify. RNG had to take down Cloud9 for first and second seed in their group. G2 was playing against Flash Wolves for their tournament lives. And those were stories we weren't expecting. Nor was that Flash. That's going to be a response from Perkz to get out of the decimating smash, but it ends up being a trade 1-for-1. Down the bottom lane, level 2 in favor of Ming. He's going to go underneath the tower. Takes just a single tower shot. Racing ahead to the early advantage, and RNG pushing G2 back.
Yeah, pretty good job there from G2, though, absorbing that pressure, not giving up too much. And I did like the trade from Xiaohu. It does put a lot of pressure on Perkz, who wants to play aggressive and get ahead. And Karsa basically spent almost no time waiting for that. He goes straight from one scuttle, through the mid lane, gets the other scuttle. So pretty efficient pathing here from Karsa.
And we can see that for Jankos, he actually decided to go through the top side of his own jungle, clear all of that out, and is now going to go back to base, pick up early boots, and he will have that Predator ready to perhaps punish Xiaohu, who is now flashless in the mid lane. But Karsa already doing what he often does, look for plays, trying to facilitate his laners and shut down these solo laners from G2.
Yeah, that rock surfing really helping Karsa just get across the map and starting to accrue that advantage already. And I touched on the group stage performances. G2 making that run through play-ins into the group stage, really showing off their 1-3-1 ability. But when I went back to watch the RNG games from groups, I got a little more nervous about their playstyle because they had their hand forced in several team fights and did not look to be in control of the game. Let's see whether or not they can survive. Here comes Jankos down in the bottom lane. Body slam's available to him. The target is Ming. He's already used the flash. That's a 3 versus 2. Ming will go down. First blood picked up by Hjarnan and G2. They're looking to escape as Uzi dashes forward. There's Aurora of the Slayer onto Jankos. He manages to survive with the summoner heal. G2 Esports, first kill on the board.
Nicely done there from Jankos, as you called it. He gets the early Predator boots and makes it work on the first gank. Not only do they get the kill, but they get the TP out of Xiaohu. So relieving some pressure there in the mid lane for Perkz. So you can see he has a pretty nice advantage off of that.
And you got to evaluate how overall worth that was for G2, because the cost for Jankos was simply his flash. But the fact that RNG sent so many members down towards the bot side means they lose a lot of pressure. And here, Ming and Uzi are just trying to be aggressive. That's what you do on a Lucian Leona lane. They don't expect Jankos to flank around from behind. That control ward in the river doing absolute work for G2. And while Xiaohu TP's in, he's able to get the slow onto Jankos. He's able to duck out away from Uzi. And overall, like, heals traded on both sides. No flash from Ming. His ignite is gone. Big win here for G2.
And it was one that they really needed, as they're going to look for Perkz here in the mid lane.
Well, we're not going to get much time for narrative today, gentlemen. Karsa is looking for a response. He was also showing up at the back end of that bottom engage, but for the time being, G2 just behind in gold.
But when you look at the fact that Hjarnan got first blood, and he had basically half the CS of Uzi around that time. So he was certainly, getting bullied pretty heavily, and getting that kill gives him such reprieve in this lane, allowing him to be able to kind of not fall further behind.
Yeah, we'll have to keep a close eye on effective power, when they hit their item spikes between Hjarnan and Uzi, and then also how the AD carries are utilized, because the way you play with Lucian and the way you play with Jhin is so significantly different. Hjarnan, the way pushing into Uzi and Ming right now.
But this also sets up nicely for what we've seen with regards to RNG in the group stages, because the thing is, in their losses, if a team went even with them in the early to mid game, or if you even forced them behind, you can see that around the mid game is where they really struggled. Teams were very good, especially Cloud9 and Vitality, at forcing fights around the 20-minute mark. Just look at the goal deficits that they found themselves in that mid game.
And I think one of the biggest things about this is the teams that were able to dictate the pace of the game to RNG were able to have a much better time. If you let RNG sit back and play their own style, Uzi accrues such ridiculous farm advantages, picking up so much jungle farm, and they fight really well around those item power spikes that he's going to be able to pick up faster than your players.
And I think that might be why Jankos is showing his face down bottom again. We just saw the vision toggle, so RNG not fully aware of Jankos' positioning, but Xiaohu has already left lane. He shoved that win in, so sensing something's up, Jankos doesn't find an opportunity this time around, but even just threatening and being in the area, this is a good sign for G2 Esports.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the Karsa who's just going to come online eventually in the late game. This is a Lucian, so if you can put that Lucian down in the early game and hold him down, then hey, you can have an advantage from that later on. And one little quick thing I want to touch on is actually the Fairy Charm here from Uzi, which is something that is becoming very popular in Korean solo.
Well, we'll get a chance to touch on that in a moment. That's a defensive flash from Hjarnan. Ming is the target for now, but Jankos is holding on to the trigger. I heard a Sion ultimate, but not quite sure for what. Perkz, by the way, he's used his ultimate in the mid lane, so I can only assume he was under threat. G2, they expend Hjarnan's flash looking for the engage and don't find anything from it.
So G2 were tried to attack the bot side of the map while getting attacked in the mid lane. Karsa had actually made his way over there to try and get a collapse onto a flash with Perkz. They couldn't find it. Now Ming looking for more, but isn't able to lock anyone down. RNG trying to be very proactive in this early game.
They really have been, but G2 has been doing a good job absorbing that pressure. Hjarnan and Wadid are not getting caught by these Zenith blades, and yeah, you're not expecting a tier from Lucian just to close that out. It is just about some mana regen for the laning phase and then selling it later on, similar to how people use refillables.
And what we can see is that at the top of your screens, the gold is even. But when you look at the scoreboard, you can see the farm is pretty different in the jungle and on the AD carry position. And even though that they're at these big deficits, the fact that they found that early kill onto Hjarnan, the fact that Jankos was involved in the first blood means that while RNG are doing well in terms of the farm department, they're staying even in terms of gold.
Yeah, exactly so. And then it's going to really start to come down to when can RNG look to try to start forcing the objectives? Because I really do feel like with this composition, you want to group up, you want to fight for early dragons, you want to force G2 into these uncomfortable situations.
And I want to see how effective G2 are responding, because, when we look at the relative strengths of teams, I feel like RNG would, come out in team fight leads or be the better team fighting team in almost every scenario. G2 haven't necessarily won their games through team fighting, but they may get forced to, as you said, Isaiah, with the Sion and Urgot and Leona jumping in their faces. So we're getting close to 10 minutes. G2 Esports have got their quintessential style of composition, and these next 10 minutes will be very telling for what level of strength G2 can bring against RNG.
And remember that we talked about for G2, what's most important is getting their solo laners ahead. And Perkz has already found himself an early advantage. Wunder has been going even with this Urgot due to the limited pressure that's been spent up towards the top side. And G2 have even decided to swap up the lanes, giving Perkz that more favorable matchup into the Ryze, and giving Wunder, the Aatrox, the kind of tank bully, the more advantageous in mid.
And I also think this is about the fact that he had no TP. They're moving down to the bot side.
All right, saving the control ward with the teleport and completing the channel. So Perkz actually makes it down bottom. There is a dragon, but it's not really worth contesting. And all this just for blue buff.
Yeah, I mean, Wunder had no TP, so they put him mid lane. Perkz is top lane with the TP. I think they were thinking, we can catch RNG by our jungle, then force a dragon fight, but unfortunately, everything kind of dissipates, and it's Letme getting a free push up top, and he'll be the one to reset.
And Wunder will go up top side to catch the wave. I don't know if they're just going to return the waves to what they are, or if they'll go back to what they the swapperoo after they base, but...
The swapperoo, is that the term now?
Yeah.
I'm on board with this.
Yeah.
The swapperoo has now been reset. First item backs have been picked up as Wadid. Woo, tries to get out of range. Luckily, does not eat the threaded volley. And here comes Karsa engaging with the ultimate. He's cutting off the retreat. Ming has access to the solar flare, and Xiaohu's making his way down as well. Hjarnan needs to reload. Not going to be able to find any more autos just yet, but the bottom lane tower is being chipped away from by Uzi.
And we talked about Karsa takes a lot of damage.
Oh, the turret shot.
Karsa's going to be forced back. Jankos now makes his way down to try and assist G2. So we see the realm warp as well, but I think it's just a matter of zoning. G2 trying to keep their bot tower alive, and this ties into what we were talking about. RNG, they want to play through the bot side of the map. They want to enable this Leona Lucian to get ahead, and they're so very close to securing this bot tower.
Yeah, and G2 are so ready to respond with the "oh no, you ain't," because the teleport was instantaneous. The response on the defensive plays from G2 has been very good, and G2 are up 500 gold. Look at the CS, even in the top lane, plus 30 in the mid lane in favor of Perkz. And yes, Hjarnan's down, but the kill, first blood in his favor, means gold is still touching distance.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see how differently these two mid laners want to play. You have Xiaohu rushing a Righteous Glory, rushing armor against Perkz on this Ryze because he wants to go straight for the team fight item. He wants to be able to enable his team, start those fights, be the engagement. Well, Perkz is going very heavily for the scaling options. It looks like he may even be building a Catalyst here and going for the tier Roa, perhaps.
Oh, look at the little trade up here in the top lane. Letme throws down the Ignite, most likely just to cycle and get teleport back in the chamber. But again, the swapperoo has taken place, and Perkz has now reclaimed top lane.
Yes, he certainly has, but Uzi is very close to taking away this tower. And
it's just gone.
This is a really big deal for RNG because whenever G2 have drafted this 1-3-1 style, one of the big issues that Flash Wolves had against them was that they couldn't find that early game proactivity to open up the map, allow them to snowball these team fights. But now Jankos in the top side.
All right, Letme's in a little bit of trouble here in a 2-on-1. Perkz and Jankos gonna look to drop him down. It's an easy kill secure at the cost of the tower bonus plus Ocean Drake. So G2 will try to get a tower reply, but I think net advantage still in favor of RNG.
Certainly so. It's a good counterpunch from G2, but the fact that this solo turret gold on first turret goes all to Uzi, and he's up almost 40 CS is really scary when he has that Blade of the Rune King done.
12.5-minute Blade of the Rune King, Azael.
Yeah.
That is gonna hit like a truck. And this is exactly what RNG want to do. Use the Sion, the Leona, the Uzi in the next, mid-game portion where they are stronger than G2.
And so here we see Letme. He didn't respect the fact that he had no topside control. All of the RNG members had invested all their vision and time towards securing that bot tower. This means that he was overextended top. With the damage from Perkz and Jankos, they were able to find themselves a kill. But more importantly for G2, one of the solo laners is getting even further ahead. And if we look at the gold, we can see that Perkz is actually about 1,000 up on his lane counterpart, whereas Uzi is the same on his side. And the two big carries for either side are getting the gold that they need.
And I think these next 5 minutes are actually so critical for G2 because you're having all these one-item power spikes coming through for RNG. They're going to try to move around the map, force objectives, take down as many turrets as possible because Uzi knows he's ridiculously stronger than Hjarnan right now, who doesn't even have the BF sword for his Stormrazor.
Okay, so I have a question for you, gentlemen. Stormrazor did just get completed in the very next second of your statement, Azael. As we crest the 15-minute mark, how much do G2 have to hold back? You know, you can already see the second tower has fallen. RNG are going to be the ones making the proactive plays. They're starting on Herald, but at what point do G2 really feel like their scaling can start to benefit them and help them out?
I mean, honestly, I think they want to avoid team fighting for most of the game. They're trying to go for this split push style of play, and when your marksman is fairly behind the other one, this is what RNG needs to do, and G2 need to split the map, pressure turrets.
All right, Jankos is going to throw down the stopwatch, try to contest the Rift Herald, and just concedes his life. I have to question the decision-making over a Rift Herald. I don't know if that's worth it.
So I think the goal there was because in order for G2 to continue scaling up and to give Hjarnan and Wadid an easier time just wave clearing in the mid lane, they wanted to deny this Rift Herald, because with it in the back pocket of RNG, they can now just send their Lucian, their Taliyah, and the Leona with the Rift Herald to help secure that mid objective, and now stalling for time, setting up for the 1v1 becomes so much harder for G2.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're going to see RNG do now. You're going to see the reset. You know, Uzi buys up. He already has all the pieces of a Black Cleaver. You run straight down mid, drop the Rift Herald, try to look to force there, because you should have the Righteous Glory completed as well for Xiaohu now. So these guys really are ready to go.
And the important thing to note here is how different RNG is compared to a lot of the other teams in Group A from the group stages. One of the big criticisms that so many teams had was you need to be proactive, you need to be willing to make stuff happen against this 1-3-1 comp, because it eventually reaches a point where you can't handle the side laners. They generate too much pressure across the map, and this is a perfect example of how to do that. Play towards one lane, open up the map, start moving your strong side around, and just keep the pressure up so that these side laners don't have time to be split push threats.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see this game, because one of the questions I had coming into this series was, which response will RNG take? Will they try to match G2 in the side lanes, try to attack those side lanes, or will they just play to emphasize their strengths? And very clearly in game one, the plan is emphasize the strengths, pick the bully lane, force objectives, make G2 come to you.
And right now, they're running to G2. Perkz gets a little caught out in the jungle, and the next few minutes are crucial. If G2 want to use their 1v1 style of composition, they cannot afford to fall further behind. A 4-man stack of G2 Esports is defending the mid lane, but the Rift Herald has been dropped by Uzi, despite the minion wave being cleared out. So a full charge, and the boop will drop 70% of this outer turret's hit points, and it will fall down. No contest from G2 Esports.
They are going to be forced to back off, though, because of the pressure Perkz had elsewhere. So they won't at least be able to take that forward for the tier 2.
But this is exactly what we expected from RNG. They're kind of playing a textbook right now. They're yet to lose an outer tower, and this goal lead is starting to mount in RNG's favor. I feel like that they kind of read the recipe book for how G2 like to come together, and they're kind of picking apart all the ingredients, preventing this 1-3-1 from going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And that means that it's up to G2 to find an opportunity now. They're down 1,200 gold. They've got no towers to their names. They have hit the 1-item power spike for some of their carries, but RNG are getting close to 2 items now, and they're going to start to accelerate ahead. If there is one thing I have been happy to see, is that either Perkz or Wunder have been applying pressure on one of these side lanes, and the first outer turret should fall shortly in favor of G2.
And this is the coolest thing about this matchup for me, because it's kind of gone almost how we expected, in that Perkz and Wunder have built their own leads. You can see them with the CS advantages. Perkz is sitting with a kill. He has the most gold on G2's team. Whereas for RNG, all the gold is funneled into Uzi once more. The team composition is built around enabling him to have a strong mid-game, a strong ability to team fight. And the question is, who will be able to set it better? Because now, at this point in the game, this is where things get much harder. You've now got to get deeper into the enemy jungle. You've got to set up that vision. You've got to play around Baron. And those are the windows in which more opportunities become available for G2 to find a pick, find that outplay in a side lane, and kind of slow RNG down.
Yeah, I mean, the last kind of easy objective for RNG to get is going to be this next dragon. And then it's going to be quite some time before you have another simple one to really take. Attacking the tier 2s is much more difficult unless they can kind of get that vision pushed up, as you're talking about. And, you know, Baron this early on also becomes difficult. So if G2 can play carefully in these next few minutes, they will buy themselves some time.
Now, this is really dangerous for Perkz, because sorry, I just realized that we were looking at RNG vision, and I was like, they have no wards up towards the top side. This is super dangerous.
What is he doing?
But then I realized, of course, it is in fact Perkz who has all that vision available to him.
And he had all the support as well. A number of G2 members backing him up just before Hjarnan decided to leave. By the way, Uzi, with the Black Cleaver completed, just throws down the culling and forces Hjarnan away. And Wunder will be able to escape with his life. Needs to use the ultimate though. No flash thrown down yet. And this is where the map now needs to be controlled in favor of the EU LCS if you want to see G2 pick up any wins. Letme and Perkz are trading blow for blow. All the vision that was set up by G2 earlier allows Perkz to play very deep, very forward, and very in the face of RNG. The response, however, is mid lane threat.
Yeah, and it is a little bit scary if G2 are forced into a fight without Wunder having his ultimate right now. So we'll see if RNG wants to group and try to force their hand around one of these tier 2s. I do think it is a pretty good opening, and they're trying to get control in between these two tier 2s.
I will say that it's pretty difficult for RNG to siege just because of the short range on the Lucian and the potential risk of a Gragas ultimate or a Rakan engage. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Azael. Trying to gain vision throughout G2 jungle is most important. Ming flashes in.
Oh, that's a very flash forward. Remember Wunder with no ultimate? Well, he's already down. Wadid's flying and dashing and diving in the fight, but he gets caught by the decimating smash. A retreating Realm Warp cannot escape from Karsa. He's threading the fight through G2, and look at that. Perkz is down. That's the third of the fight. Only the duo left standing, but not for much longer. Hjarnan is feared beyond death. And Letme says, please, I'll have the inner turret.
And this is the worst case scenario for G2 as RNG finds their team fight. The Lucian is at 2 items. Their front line is plenty tanky, and with the minion wave already set up in bot, they can secure an inhibitor.
They're going to get a 20-minute inhibitor here and choosing their timing perfectly. They force the ult out of Wunder, they find the pick onto him, dies immediately at the start of the fight, and that was it for G2.
That's exactly what you want to see when a team has to prevent and stop their opponent from setting up the 1-3-1. You have to attack them in the initialization phase, and RNG do it beautifully.
And look at the vision from G2. They cannot move this freely to their own half of the jungle. This is why setting up that vision is so important. And again, Wunder, who had no ultimate, gets locked down by a fantastic play from Ming. And G2 at this point should disengage. But they think they've caught Uzi out of position. They end up not being able to kill him. And then the turnaround fight comes in from RNG.
Yeah, and in this, our Acer Predator replay, you do see they continue the chase forward. Wadid and Perkz getting so low. Xiaohu committing fully. They know this is their fight with the engage. You have to say the Wunder pretty bold to actually be queuing back towards the team without having vision, and now Ming is on the hunt again.
Oh, Zenith Blade just sidestepped by Perkz, but I was waiting for the solar flare. I thought that was coming, Azael. Perkz manages to get just off of that
really
seismic shove. And look, it's a 4K gold lead. The inhibitor is exposed in the bottom lane, and this gold growth up to 4,000 in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, and I mean, the scariest part about it is that Uzi has nearly 3,000 gold lead himself, right? And that is the most important member on the team right now. Not only is he on 2 items, but he has tabbies and a QSS. So he can dive in, has tons of damage, and a lot of safety.
And of course, if anybody caught the Uzi feature from earlier in the day, it was narrated by Froskurin. Uzi and Ryze the puppy, is a story as long as competitive League of Legends itself. This composition, he was the tip of the spear, and he's being used to great effect. His QSS now to back up the Ninja Tabba means it's going to be nearly impossible to lock him down long enough to kill him. And RNG, they're playing the Baron game to seal the deal in game 1 here.
Yeah, I mean, the puppy's looking pretty grown up, Trevor.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big old bulldog now, so you got to be very, very careful how you fight around this guy.
And RNG, they just have full vision control. You can see how dark it is right now for G2. This is the easiest way for RNG to set up for a Baron fight, but they feel so confident that they're just walking up to this tier 2, using the Taliyah wall to just secure themselves another objective.
If I recall correctly, the first stage of groups in the first 3 games, RNG didn't prioritize the Baron. They didn't need it. They were able to win the game just through macro, just through map-based play and decisions. They got themselves 6 towers down, the only non-base turret from G2's in the top lane. And you have to feel it's not long for this world, because RNG have got every other objective so far.
One thing you will say, though, for G2 is they have a lot of really strong engage. So if Uzi does misstep, if they can find him with Jankos, with Wadid, on these hard engaged champions, there is an opportunity to win a fight and then start to turn things around, to buy enough time. And G2 really does need to look for that sort of a fight, because right now it is RNG dictating everything to them.
G2 have done what they can to get a semblance of vision around this Baron area, but you can see though that the big gold discrepancies right now are between the 280 carries and the 2 junglers, and for RNG, they're the main damage dealers. And If G2 find themselves in a fight, because of the strong front line, I worry about how Ryze will be able to melt through that. And while you are right, they have like a lot of dive threat. I feel like with the all-in potential that RNG have, they might just immediately attack the front line. So I'm looking at this for G2 and I'm thinking they're going to rely on RNG to make a huge mistake right now if they want to stand a chance of turning this around.
Well, RNG are going to turn around the 2v1 in the bot lane.
Here comes Sion.
Perkz are running for their lives after the teleport complete. Solar Flare onto Perkz. Gonna hold on to the flash, and it's Uzi on a killing spree. 3-0-3, 100% kill participation. RNG are wielding him beautifully.
And this was G2 trying to attack the side lanes, trying to utilize the power of Perkz to help Wunder find a kill onto Letme. He flashes away and says, hey guys, they've got no tower, and immediately RNG are quick to punish. And this is something that this team is so good at. Every time you overstep, every time you think you've made the correct decision, they see the weakness in it, they abuse it, and they turn it in their favor.
And this is also what the expectation was for this series coming in, especially game one. Looking at a 1-3-1 style composition from G2 and going, well, G2 have got the ability, the intelligence, the champion pools to attack the 1-3-1 and beat it before it starts. So the pressure is on G2 to prove to us that they can find the angle or the surprise to catch RNG and the world off guard. Or, as they look forward throughout the series, what else do they have in their pockets?
Yeah, and I think it gets very tough for G2 to hang on a game like this with double Mountain Drake also on RNG. I actually really prioritize that Dragon over any others in a game like this when you're running essentially 3 tanks. Infernal is probably even less important because this gives you such easy access to potentially rushing down the Baron. It's less time for G2 to be able to respond, which means they have to face check more aggressively. They have to get over here right now, and RNG can force them into a fight they're not ready for.
Teleports coming in north of the Baron pit. Baron's down to 50% and Ming is looking for an engage. Solar Flare is available to him, but the Zenith Blade doesn't find a target. They pulled RNG off the Baron and Hjarnan sidesteps the drift. Now there's the engage from Xiaohu. He's flashed over the wall, and Weavers will lock out G2 Esports. So far, nobody's died, but for how much longer? Solar Flare stuns up Wunder, and RNG back away. G2, they stop the Baron, but they don't concede any kills.
And RNG still has a lot of health. They could just shove out mid and go right back to the Baron if they want, but it looks like they will reset.
But impressive from G2 to be able to get out of that situation. The fact that RNG, they played the setup perfectly. They knew that they could win the 5v5. They forced G2 to come and check the objective. And unfortunately, they just couldn't convert it because Ming, his positioning was not ideal. He got a little too close to Hjarnan and Wunder. They chunked him out before the fight started. He lost his flash, and then they had to rely on Xiaohu to find that engage. And with his ultimate missing, they were just kind of flashing and chasing to try and find that engage, which unfortunately for RNG, they just couldn't lock down.
Certainly credit to Hjarnan, though. Sidestepping the Sion ultimate was the difference between life and death in that situation. But G2 are going to be forced into a similar situation, very likely, and this time, Hjarnan and Perkz will have no flash. So you can expect RNG to hard commit onto those 2 low mobility carries.
It's fine. Hjarnan's blue suede shoes, they've dodged once already. Let's see if he can do it.
Got his fancy feet, let's go.
It's going to be so difficult. The item disparity is gigantic. Uzi, by the way, he finished his rapid fire cannon. Hjarnan's got a couple of ingredients, but only 2.5, a little bit of thrift store shopping for now. And RNG, they're going to push the vision deeper first.
And they started again.
Then back away to start Baron. This is elegant in its execution, Venius.
Now you can see Uzi was pushing out mid, but he moves back
There's
up.
no vision.
Complete darkness. G2 can't contest this time around.
Yeah.
This should be an easy secure for RNG. Excellently done from the LPL representative.
Yeah, really well done from them. The double mountain makes that so easy to actually burn down, and they had full vision control. No chance of G2 being able to face check into that without flashes, because if Hjarnan and Perkz get caught, that's probably just the game ending. So while this is certainly dire for G2, it's probably the best of a very bad situation, and it's going to be down to their playmaking. You have to look at Wadid, you have to look at Jankos, because if you don't find an engage, I don't think you will survive this Baron.
Now, this is a best of 5, and so far in game 1, RNG have come out swinging. They played towards the style that found them a lot of success during the regular season. In the first round robin, where they played around Uzi and relied on team fighting, having Xiaohu and Letme kind of on these facilitators to help support their AD and jungle. they've kind of performed the style that they expected, and now the pressure kind of falls on G2 because in this situation, they're relying on RNG to make a big mistake if they want to be able to come back into this game.
And that's so difficult because this team doesn't make too many unforced errors.
Exactly.
When RNG are in the lead, this is a team that plays ahead, stays ahead. And Medius, you touched on first round robin, second round robin. I want to get back to that in a moment as Ming will be stepping forward, gets rooted up, but he's found the Zenith Blade. That means he's got the engage. Fear Beyond Death has already got a kill, but Wunder's got one back. At what cost? The World Ender will bring him back to life, but he's already surrounded by RNG members, and while it looked good to start, it's a 2-for-2 in favor of G2. It's the least they can take.
Yeah, Xiaohu had a very nice flank there. G2 do trade evenly, but the important member is still alive. It's Uzi at full health. 2 tanks in front of him. They're pushing with the Baron.
And Wunder and Perkz are not here to contest. G2, they'll be forced to defend with what they have, but with the way in which RNG are playing, they can just look to walk into the base of G2.
And it's still 100% kill participation for Uzi. 4-0-4. He's got the Baron buff, he's got the support of Xiaohu, and he's exposed another inhibitor. Just shy of 30 minutes on the clock. It's an 8,000 gold lead, 3 dragons to nothing, 8 kills to 4, 8 towers to 2. This is a shellacking in favor of Royal Navy Development.
It certainly is, and as we see this fight one more time, G2 is retreating and starts to group up, so Ming says, I'm going in looking for Perkz, knowing he didn't have the flash. Xiaohu is already behind them, and in comes Uzi.
And this was just the perfect setup from Ming. The fact that Perkz was just chain CC'd underneath.
Here we go again.
Time. Oh no, they're gonna get away from that. But unfortunately for G2, they got forced into this channel, this funnel.
Choke point or
yeah,
tunnel.
Yeah, that
Tunnel. I get it.
Covered all the
That
bases.
is what I was trying to say. They lost. They lost the fight. RNG now trying to siege at mid.
And I think RNG can take whatever they want. 30 seconds left on Baron. And the Zenith Blade comes over the wall. Ming doesn't find his man, but it doesn't matter. The first inhibitor falls. They'll be able to just peel around to the bottom lane. Knock over the second inhibitor as they desire. G2 got a little bit of time before Uzi can get into the fight, and Ming finds a Zenith Blade. That's a defensive flash from Jankos, and G2 are routed and running for their lives. Letme's ultimate gets the first. There's a reply from Karsa for the second. G2 Esports are being obliterated inside their base. It's a double kill for Uzi to close it out, and they're going to look for the ace before they finish the base. Letme is trying to hunt him down with those shotgun knees. And the Nexus turrets start to fall. Royal never give up. The #1 seed from the LPL. They will pick up this first game, taking now G2 Esports.
And an incredible first game from RNG. They check all the boxes, playing so well around their bottom lane. Stability in the solo lanes, not allowing these G2 solo laners to really get advantages there because they're laning against these tanky champions. They're laning against people who are willing to give up CS disadvantages, knowing that they can get Uzi ahead and make the game about the team fight.
And for G2, I wonder why they put so much value on the Rakan. They banned away the Thresh as an answer, but it still gave RNG a very strong 2v2. And moving throughout the rest of this draft, or moving throughout this series rather, you need to kind of control this bot lane. You need to make sure that they can't just build their own leads like they have done, but at the same time, you got to limit Xiaohu's ability to roam down to bot, because we saw him invest teleport at level 4. We saw him ulting down towards the bot lane.
What was it Azale said? This composition could have like a party of 4 or 5 people in the bottom lane?
And these are the two key factors I feel G2 need to find a shift up if they want to stand a chance, because RNG,
well, hold
they
that
look good.
thought. We're going to find out. G2 will have side section for the next game. But first, RNG, they start the series with a win. And exactly how they did it, we're going to head to the State Farm Analyst Desk.
Thank you very much, Quick Shot. Now that's the kind of game one you expect out of a tournament favorite. Control from start to finish for RNG. It wasn't a quick game. It wasn't overly dominant by any means, but they did take the steps one at a time. As Ale said it, they checked the boxes from minute 1 to game victory.
Yeah, and I do find it interesting the way they did it as well with the Lucian. It's not the tournament meta in the bot lane, right? It's not Karsa Xayah, but it's still a dominant performance, right? He hit the item power spikes to basically make him untouchable and still dominant in team fights, but it is showing an adaptation from what RNG showed earlier on in the group stage.
And it's what they did at the very end of that second or that final day of group stages was go back to the more early game bot lanes.
Yeah, it's getting 2 looks from RNG. They can play the lane phase, they can play the Karsa, the hyperscaling, and they can also play 1-3-1 if push. Ryze is one of Xiaohu's big picks. It's one of the champions that he has done well on in the tournament. And so if they, again, are pushed back to the wall, feel like they're on the back foot, they can scramble for different strategies.
1,500 gold at 15
Yeah.
minutes.
This is a really good answer against G2. We saw this a little bit in the group stage as well. When the G2 bot lane fell really far behind and lost the early turret, the enemy AD carry and support just started going from lane to lane to lane. And all these split pushes on G2, they need time. They need items before they can carry a game. So they end up losing too many things when the bot lane falls behind, like it did here. So I think we're gonna see a change. The Rakan pick was maybe not necessary, a little bit too risky in the laning phase, but I'm not sure if you have any answer to a Lucian, actually. Play Sivir, play Jhin, you probably lose the lane no matter what.
But the thing is that there is a blueprint to beating RNG, and we've seen it done multiple times, and it starts with contesting Uzi. And I do agree with you that it's hard to contest a pick like Lucian, but you have to do something, and that's why when we talk about the stylistic mismatch, the 1-3-1 versus RNG's, big 5v5, oh, this could be good for G2. Maybe they force RNG that they never get to 5v5. But the fact that G2 don't support their bot lane, they don't give them a lot of resources. We saw Jankos with an early game here.
I was going to say, we say that, but Jankos paid attention to that bot lane, and they continued to lose.
But that's the thing. Like, you need to prioritize having a kill-oriented lane or having the push there. You have to contest Uzi. You can't just let him walk over you in lane phase. You will never win.
I gotta say, as long as they're gonna be drafting Lucian, Leona, and with Taliyah and a bunch of tanks that can go down there, that's gonna be hard. I think for G2 at least, finding a way to pull pressure away from that lane, which could be not giving away Urgot, right? Or, I mean, there are also just matchups where the players themselves make it difficult and you can't solve it in draft.
Sure, I think what we also could see is a more early game focused jungle pick and then try to actually hard commit around solo laners for early ganks, not necessarily go bot lane. Because I think at some point you got to make a choice, as G2 is saying, do we go to the losing lane and try and stop the bleeding?
Right.
Or do we try and speed up our actual winning lanes so we might get some pressure earlier in the game here? And that's one of the decisions they have to make going into game 2.
That's why I thought the Urgot, the Sion, and the Taliyah were so important, because then if you try to target any of those lanes, Urgot has just been dominating these lane phases. Sion is basically an unmovable boulder, and then Taliyah has so much tempo because of how quickly she moves through the jungle. So it's like, I agree with you, like maybe you try to flip it, try to camp maybe Wunder's lane or Perkz lane, try to unlock him, get to bottom, but how do you break any of those tanks?
Think it over for a second. We'll come back to your guys' thoughts on how they should adapt coming into game 2. I want to take a look at one other fight in this game. Down in the bot lane, RNG picking up a 4-0.
Yeah, this is a situation where you could see G2 thought this was an opportunity to turn because RNG didn't have everyone there at the start, but they really just got baited in. I mean, at this point, Uzi's got high CDR on Lucian, able to dash pretty much everywhere. And at this stage in the game, the Lucian is actually at his strongest point, so G2 kind of gets sucked into a 5v5, which they had no chance of winning.
Exactly. G2's comp are not supposed to win these 5 versus 5s. At this point, they're supposed to hold mid with the Jhin and have push in both side lanes with the Aatrox and the Ryze, but you never get there when you do fall behind early, and that's always the risk with 1-3-1. And one of the problems where, even if we said stylistically, G2 actually could match up nicely with the soul laners, because they can fall behind early through the bottom side, it can then suddenly be a really bad matchup.
Uzi piloting that Lucian will be your MasterCard player of the game. Again, at the top of the day, we talked about RNG putting all of their resources behind this guy in the bot lane, indexing into that hyper carry style, and it's already paying dividends in this best of 5.
When we talk about signature picks, Uzi has 2 legacy picks. He, of course, has his Vayne, and he, of course, has his Lucian. This was the champion that he piloted all the way to the 2014 World Championship, and now we get to see him again return to it in 2018 when he decides that the Karsa and the Xayah aren't doing it for him.
Now I'm coming back to you guys on the adaptation points because I've received word that G2 has elected to go over to blue side. So unlike our first series of the evening, the teams are going to trade sides this time around. Now, with everything that you guys were already spitballing on, where is the fix for G2? Is it go harder into the bot lane, or is it completely divert your attention and go elsewhere? With blue side, does that, kind of adjust the way you're thinking coming into this game too?
Well, we know first pick-wise, they're looking for things like Akali, Irelia. That's what they actually found success with when they first picked that before. They can flex it between both solo laners. So they are probably trying to force a couple of bans from RNG. I don't think the Heimerdinger is going to be left open because of it, but the Tahm Kench could be one. And that is a big thing for G2. If they can find a way to get that support in the bottom lane, it's a lot easier for them to actually play the early laning phase because Rakan can't do it for them.
But if they do the Tahm Kench, the LPL loves picking Kalista into Tahm Kench because they have kill threat on the gray health because they stack them full of the Rens and then
Ban it
just
in
wait
second
to pull.
phase.
They'd have to, because
If
they see the Tahm Kench and they let it through, I almost guarantee that Uzi will insta-lock Kalista.
Yeah.
Does Wunder play the other side of the Urgot Aatrox matchup?
I think if you can first pick Urgot, you might have to because there's so many other bans. I'm just thinking about if Uzi's not willing to pick a late game hyper carry, it's going to be real hard. Like the Lucian, the Kalista, the Varus, there's just so many things he can pick.
What's Hjarnan's best early game AD carry?
I think it's Jhin.
Is it
I mean,
Jhin?
it is Jhin. However, if G2
The support
decide...
choice.
Well, support choice obviously can be better for them, but there's another option for G2. If they do see the full tank comps again, pick a Sivir. Stop picking for team fights instead. Urgot comes in first pick, Sivir comes in next. You can actually play 5 versus 5 and try and match RNG there, even though that is normally where RNG are really strong and G2 have struggled.
It's clear that G2 is going to have to find something special if they want to put 3 wins together against this terrifying RNG squad. The reigning MSI champions have picked up game 1. We'll see how G2 responds when we return.
Isn't Karsa playing? Why is it Ming?
Ming is a support.
Ming is support. Oh my god. We lost, by the way. Oh my god.
It's available to him. The target is Ming. He's already used the flash. That's a 3 versus 2. Ming will go down. First blood picked up by Hjarnan. He's threaded the follow through G2. And look at that. Perkz is down. That's the third of the fight. Only the duo left standing, but not for much longer. Found the Zenith blade. That means he's got the engage. Fear Beyond Death has already got a kill. But Wunder's got one back. At what cost? Letme's ultimate gets the first. There's a reply from Karsa for the second. G2 Esports are being obliterated